This is the Sony HDR CX625, one of the last HD camcorders that Sony has made. But how good is it in 2025? Because this thing was released in 2016. And what's nice about this camera is that it has 30 times optical zoom. So if you want to shoot something far in the distance, so maybe planes or trains or cars, then that's really nice. So you have that reach with this camera. And because it is a camcorder, you can record for a longer period of time with this without it overheating or the battery running out, because you can have this small battery, but you can also put a much larger one on here, which is nice. And this camera also doesn't consume that much power, so you can record for hours with this camera. And what's also insane is the stabilization that's in this camera. So the lens and sensor actually float in a housing that will compensate your movement, which means that even when you are zooming in really far, you can still get some decently stable shots, whereas with normal cameras you can't get stable shots when you are zooming in a lot and then also shooting handheld. So with other cameras you always need to use a tripod, but whereas with this camera you can get to about 15 or 20 times zoom and still get a pretty stable image when shooting handheld and standing still. So that's actually pretty impressive. On the side it does have a small door for the microphone input and also the headphone jack, so you can monitor audio, but also unlike the CX450, it does have a nice multi-interface shoe where you can connect the Sony microphones. And what's also nice about this camera is even though it's a bit bigger compared to the other Sony Handycams, it is still very light, so it's really easy to carry around with this nice hand strap here on the side that you can adjust. So the camcorder is really comfortable, it won't fall out of your hand, like for example the Sony A7 series. This is the older generation, so it has a very small grip, which makes it very uncomfortable to hold. And that's also with some other cameras. For example, the ZV-E10 also has a small grip, whereas this is very comfortable. But there's not really a reason to get a camcorder if the video quality isn't that good. So how is the video quality in 2025? Well, if I'm really honest, it's not that great anymore. It's because it has a small 1/5.8 inch sensor, which is a lot smaller compared to most camcorders, which means that it doesn't capture a lot of detail. It is not just a small sensor, but an extremely tiny one, like even a smartphone from a few years ago has a larger sensor than this camera. And obviously there are a few advantages to that, because the sensor is so small, that means that they can pack a large zoom into this camera, while still making sure that the camera has the gimbal mechanism inside while being light, so that's really cool. But why would you want to get a camera that doesn't have a good image quality? So yeah, the image quality is decent and you can still use it, for example, for some basic YouTube videos maybe, or for capturing your memories. Then maybe you don't need the best quality and then this can still shoot some decent video. Especially if you need a large zoom, because your smartphone can't get a zoom this large and it's also not as comfortable as this camera. And you will have the option to change batteries and have this screen that you can angle, which is a lot nicer for shooting. So this is a quick vlogging test using the Sony CX625. The nice thing about the Sony HDR CX625 is that it does have the flip screen, so for vlogging it's pretty nice. Right now I am all the way zoomed out. And this is the internal microphone, everything is on fully automatic, with the stabilization set to active. But as you can see, the image isn't the sharpest, and with these tiny sensors it means that everything gets overexposed really quickly. So that is a bit disappointing. But it does have a really nice zoom, so that is pretty cool. Look. You can zoom in all the way and also all the way back out. So for a camera that is this small, that is actually pretty impressive. And the stabilization is also decent. This is a quick zoom test using the Sony CX625. So you can see how far the zoom actually goes. It just keeps going, which is pretty cool. So you have a lot of reach. But you can see that the image looks very soft when zoomed in all the way. So when I zoom in all the way, you can see the image will start to get very noisy. But if you don't zoom in a lot, even a smartphone from a few years ago is better than this camera, which is really disappointing because Sony did make some other Handycam models that were also only HD but had a larger sensor and then less zoom, for example only 10 times optical zoom. But then the video quality would be a little bit better compared to this camera. And this camera is just definitely showing its age. Like the video quality is just, it's okay. And you can also see that when it gets a little bit darker, the image will get a lot grainier, just like action cameras. So if you are shooting in low light, this camera is definitely not meant for you. And the autofocus performance, well, everything is most of the time in focus, so you don't need to worry that much about it. The autofocus isn't that fast, but because most of the time everything is in focus, you don't really have that issue. So should you buy the Sony CX625 in 2025? Well, I think probably not, unless you can find one for a really good price. But the sensor size is just too small to get a good image today. Unless you just looked at the videos that I just showed you and you can get one for a very good price, then maybe it's still worth considering this camera. But other than that, I think this camera is sadly outdated. So what do you think of the Sony CX625? Do you own one, or were you maybe thinking of buying one? Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching.